Actually, this is a good question, and actually for whoever's listening, how, in your opinion, would you advise people to identify that this is potentially a scam? These people are looking to amass amount of money from a crowd, from an audience, and they don't have any intention to do the product.
This goes without saying. I think whenever you're gonna do a purchase or put your money somewhere, invest it on the internet, you need to do your own research, analysis, and to verify as much of the information as possible that is being shown to you. For example, check who are these people that are, promising you this project.
Welcome to the Financial Frontiers podcast. My name is Dinos. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share this channel. It helps us create more content and deliver more episodes for you. Hope you enjoy this episode.
Here we are. Here's another episode of the Financial Frontiers. Today I have with me Frixos Larkos.
Yes.
From Crowdbase EU. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
The discussion today is going to be about crowdfunding, crowdsourcing. I think there are different terms used in the industry. We're going to discuss what that actually is, what Crowdbase does. Frixos, please tell us about you. Give us a bit of your background. Let's have this conversation. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me again. So, as you mentioned, Frixos, I'm the co-founder and CEO of Crowdbase, and we're the first regulated investment-based crowdfunding platform here in Cyprus. A bit about myself. I studied in the UK, did my bachelor's in economics and finance at the University of Surrey. I worked a little bit in the insurance industry, and then I did my master's in financial analysis at London Business School. And then I stayed a few more months to work in investment banking in London, before coming back to Cyprus to begin my journey with Crowdbase and begin working full-time on this new venture that we're doing.
Did you mention when was that? When were you in London?
Yeah, so I went to the UK in 2015 and I came back in summer 2021. So I was in London the last 2 years before I left. So during COVID mostly.
Right. The timing there. So the standard, let's call it, the journey that any individual follows in their professional career. You left school, whatever it is, you studied, and then got a job. From there, obviously, got some experience. I guess saw an opportunity to start this up. Can you give us a bit of details about what inspired you to start Crowdbase, and then we'll get into details about what that exactly is.
Sure. So whilst I was just right after I graduated from my master's degree in summer 2020, I was looking for a job, as everybody naturally does. But unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, that was quite challenging at that time. So I needed something to keep myself busy until I found a job. And I was working with Luis Loizou in London, who is a Cypriot investment banker. And we were working on a tender offer for the equity fund, Cyprus Equity Fund, which is essentially a fund of money that's been put on the side by the government to be invested in innovative startups. So we were working on a tender offer for that in order, to get the mandate to manage the fund. And through that process, I saw the challenges that there were in Cyprus in financing innovative companies. And at the same time, I also saw what crowdfunding was doing in more mature markets like the US, UK, and Israel, where people were funding, millions of dollars, pounds, or euros for these startups, and they didn't need the traditional route of going to the bank or going through angel investors or VCs. They could tap the crowd, let's just say the day-to-day people, to raise the money from them and make their startup a success or grow their startup. So yeah, I mean, I started working on the sidelines whilst working in London on structuring Crowdbase, on applying to get the license for Crowdbase from SciSec. And it slowly all came together in summer of 2021, where I kind of had to make a decision. Do I either go for this full time, full steam ahead, or do I let it go and just continue my career in London and where else?
Well, good for you. You know, I think that's a great innovation. I wish you all the success. And I think, you know, platforms like yours help, let's call it, inspire people to invest. And I think this will become more clear when, you know, we kind of clarify here in our talk what exactly crowdfunding is. But before we get there, you mentioned that you were working on the Cyprus equity fund, which, as I understand it, based just from the name, it is a government-backed investment program, let's call it, for innovation.
Exactly. And what's different from comparing these with the traditional grants, let's just say from IDEC and so on, is that these will be operated as a for-profit fund. So they will essentially invest the money, get a portion of a startup or a business, and then they will manage that investment in order to make a profit. So in combination with the money of the government and some private raised money, the end goal for these managers is to make a significant profit in order to be able to do it again in the future, not with government money, maybe next time. And this will hopefully, the goal is to kickstart the startup ecosystem in Cyprus.
Interesting. So that's different to the standard, let's call it, government grants that I'm familiar with, where you know you apply. Let's say you have an innovative idea or some a business that you want to start, and then there's a program from the government that funds, and then that program ends there. If you win. If you earn the trust, let's call it, whatever, you pass the program, all the check marks, you get the investment, and there's no obligation. That's it. You know, good luck to you. You got the money. You don't. The government isn't looking for a return of investment.
Exactly.
Whereas this equity fund, that's different, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's the big difference. And I believe there is a time and place for grants to help innovation and research and development to grow and prosper here in Cyprus. But at the same time, at some point, you can't really be holding the hand of businesses of the private sector along the way in every step. So at some point, these businesses need to mature enough and face the realities of the private market that if you're not doing well, if you're not having a return on your investment or your shareholders or everybody else, then you failed, and then we shouldn't be putting endless amount of free money into this business. And that's why I believe it's a good idea. It's a good idea to get them accustomed to what the realities is beyond Cyprus.
100%. Okay. So let's take a few steps back.
Sure.
And I'll give you what my understanding is of what crowdfunding is. And then let's kind of dig into those models that I'm aware of, and these come in the likes of this, the Indiegogo or Kickstarter, Indiegogo.com, Kickstarter.com, which are more a global scale funding program where, let's say, there's a new product, right, that needs to launch, and funding is required. The entrepreneurs or the owners of this product or this idea, instead of going to angel investors or the likes of like Shark Tank type investment, high net worth individuals, you amass the investment that you need from a crowd. Right, so that's hence the name crowdfunding, and what in the case of like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, I understand that, let's say there's a product. Let's say there's a water bottle that's got a smart screen on it. Right? Just an example. And the creators of this product think, this is something that the market needs, and then they list it on the Kickstarter website, say this is what it is. Whoever invests, this product is going to eventually cost $1,000 per bottle, and you get a smart screen that shows all the contents of the water, and it filters the water and whatever. Just some idea. And instead of paying $1,000 when the product launches, we need your money, we need the investment, and if you partake $250, give $250, and if we manage to get this money, we create this product, and you'll get it at that price, $250 instead of $1,000. So that's how that's crowdfunding with Kickstarter, the likes of Kickstarter and Indiegogo work, and it's very successful. I mean, these businesses have got great success with many projects that have succeeded. Like if I think of some, I think Pebble,
Oculus Rift,
Oculus,
bought by Facebook.
The Remarkable that I use, I've used this on this podcast. The Remarkable
from Kickstarter.
I don't know if it was from Kickstarter, but they launched Remarkable 1 from crowdfunding, and it was super successful. And then they managed to establish themselves as a business, with proper revenues. Didn't need a second round funding. Yeah, created the Remarkable 2, and it's really awesome, right? That product was the thinnest tablet in the world. Replace your normal paper, pen and paper, for whoever likes to take notes, and they do it digitally, right? So that they were very successful. It's a really awesome product, right? I didn't buy the product as a funder, as a backer, what they call backers, but I did buy the product for the normal price. It was not cheap, €600, whatever it was, €600-700. So that's another very good example. What does Crowdbase do? Do you? It's a few questions here, right? Yeah. Let's actually discuss the likes of Kickstarter. That business and your feedback. I'd like to hear your feedback about that business.
Yeah, of course. So, as you mentioned, crowdfunding there is a lot of different types of crowdfunding. Some of which you mentioned, Kickstarter, is the so-called rewards-based crowdfunding. So you back a campaign and you get a reward in return. Indiegogo, that's a donation-based crowdfunding. So you just donate money to a project or a cause you believe in. What we would do with Crowdbase, that's investment-based crowdfunding, and we'll go into that a bit later. But the underlying theme of crowdfunding is that a lot of people come together through usually an online medium, a website of sorts. They put a small amount of money from a large number of backers or investors or individuals, and then the money is collected by the platform and then sent to the project owner. That's what we usually call them, or the cause that you want to support. And this whole process is seamlessly facilitated online. As you mentioned, Kickstarter and Indiegogo are global platforms. Kickstarter probably started the whole industry, more or less, and there's been some great successes, but also some downfalls there. You hear some horror stories of what happened, and again, we can go a bit into that later of what sets us apart from these platforms. And Indiegogo, that's a great way to, help a cause that you believe in, and you don't need to, go door to door anymore. You can do it online. You can do it seamlessly. It can be very convenient for a large number of people. It's just that, it's different models using the underlying technology or concept of crowdfunding, but the end goal is different for these businesses.
Indiegogo maybe compares to a charity of sorts. Yeah. You mentioned there were some horror stories in Kickstarter, and I think I can imagine what those are, but just to kind of build the context, and I'd like to hear some of these horror stories that you've most likely got in mind, but just to kind of create more context on what this like the likes of Kickstarter and crowdfunding. And let's follow this example that I said, right? The smart water bottle. So the project has a target investment amount. Let's say that amount was for this product $2 million.
Yeah, in order to make this product essentially.
100%. So in order to be able to develop this product, there's a business plan. Whatever cost is the plastic, the creation of the plastic, the integration, implementation of the smart screen device, the filtration. Get a little business idea here. Yeah. So a crap business idea, but one nonetheless. This could be a horror story.
Could be.
So let's say that's $2 million, the project plan, that's how much we need to create this product, launch it, market it.
Yeah.
Right. If that money is not reached, let's say the amount of backers and investment they reached whatever, 1.5 million.
Yeah.
The project does not go through, everybody gets their money back.
Yes.
If, however, they got the money, so $2 million, the funding round was successful.
Yes.
Check. Everybody now is in. If that project fails, you don't get your money back.
Yeah, or you don't get your reward or the thing you were promised.
Correct. You don't get the money back, neither do you get the reward. The project failed. They didn't manage to create the product for whatever reason. Right. What are the horror stories you've heard of?
I mean, I'm trying to remember a specific name, but there is a plethora of them, unfortunately, from coolers to video games to, so-called gadgets. And, I think there was a quite famous one, this drone camera that was supposed to lift your phone and take a picture of you while floating in the air. But yeah, that's a bit of the problem and challenges of having this a little bit anonymous process online. Okay, you see a nice video, nice music, inspirational story, and so on. You want to pack it, but there isn't anybody who is checking that these facts are correct. And with scams becoming so sophisticated nowadays, then it's quite easy, to mislead a lot of people into believing this is a real thing and that this could happen and so on. So a lot of people, a lot of these projects, either they are altogether a scam, so they never had any intention to do what they said they're gonna do, or unfortunately due to they didn't realize the scale of the project that they promised to do, then they miscalculated, let's just say, the cost of producing this bottle by 10x. So you're immediately in the, you're screwed. You can't do much about it. So those are the two common examples of a lot of failed projects on these platforms.
So that makes sense. And actually, this is a good question. And actually, for whoever's listening, how, in your opinion, would you advise people to identify that this is potentially a scam? These people are looking to amass amount of money from a crowd, from an audience, and they don't have any intention to do the product.
Yeah, so, I mean, this goes without saying. I think whenever you're going to do a purchase or put your money somewhere, invest it on the internet, you need to do your own research, analysis, and to verify as much of the information as possible that is being shown to you. For example, check who are these people that are, promising you this project. Do they have experience in the relevant field, or is this just some guys that came out of nowhere and they decided they want to do something completely out of their field just because it sounds, sexy? Nowadays it's AI. It could be, I'm going to do the next AI startup, but what's my background. If my background is in finance, then there's a big missing link there. So that would be the one thing. And there is a lot of other stuff you can check for the authenticity of these projects. But I think this burden should fall more on the platform rather than the individual. And that's a bit where crowd-based, what we do, differentiates from Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Because we're a regulated platform and we have certain procedures that we need to follow, we do these checks on behalf of the investors. So we do our due diligence and KYC to make sure that the information that is placed to the investors is correct. But talking more in general, then one of the good signs to check on these platforms is if they are regulated. What are their own procedures, which most of the time they need to advertise that they have to follow to verify the information that's shown to you. If you just open to anybody to show whatever information they want, then you can't really trust that. You need to do more due diligence on your own.
I mean, yeah, I was going to ask you that question, and that makes a lot of logical sense, right? In my mind, it is the likes of Kickstarter, that's clarification. Crowdbase does the due diligence for projects, and that's because you're regulated. We'll get into that shortly, but just sticking onto the topic of the reward-based funding. Even so, they're not regulated, Kickstarter?
No, they're not regulated.
Okay, so they're not regulated because why? I mean, why do they not need regulation while Crowdbase does?
Yeah, so the difference is that we are dealing with investments, and when you're dealing with investments, there is always a framework and a regulation that you need to follow. Same with brokerages, exchanges, and so on. Whereas because the Kickstarter is just dealing with rewards, and I'm sure there's somewhere a disclaimer on that website that it's probably, you may not even receive that reward. It's not a binding commitment to receive that. Then they don't really need to follow these strict procedures to make sure that the backers or the people that commit their money are protected the same way we do.
Regulation aside, right? And I mean, there's so much to talk about there. You mentioned that you regulated Crowdbase is regulated by the SISEC.
Yes, correct.
So which means your Crowdbase is a separate investment firm.
Yes, yeah.
And you could offer like a trading platform and investments like the majority of the industry that I'm mainly involved in.
Yeah, if we choose to expand our license, you need to get a special permission for a different kind of offering. But yeah, we could do that.
So it's on the same license.
Yeah.
So just regulation aside, if we think about the business model like Kickstarter, I mean, it's not to their favor if there are a bunch of scammers that are able to exploit their audience and scam people out of money.
Yeah.
It's not to their advantage because then they will just drop in terms of credibility. I think even without the regulation, just makes business sense that they do some form of due diligence, right?
It does make sense, and I think they have made progress since their inception back in 2010, if I'm not mistaken, and they're trying to do more due diligence and verification of this information. It's just the problem is if you're doing it at that scale, you could have somebody in the middle of nowhere. How do you check them, and is it worth the while based on your business model, based on what you would earn from this campaign, to have the equivalent cost of checking this information, verifying this information? And the balance is usually somewhere in between. So they're probably gonna trying to do as much of the automated due diligence and verification of the information, but that you can also kind of play around and trick the system if you really want to. So it's not really 100% solution. They probably have a better rate, less rate of scamming nowadays, but that's always a concern.
And so let's say, for example, a would-be investor who's looking at this has never heard of Kickstarter ever before, or never heard of Crowdbase. What would you say? So we'd say like, don't rely only on the due diligence of Kickstarter.
Of course.
Do your own due diligence. And I would imagine that any project that's listed on Kickstarter, in the meantime, it's been quite a while. I haven't gone onto these platforms. I was looking at it many years ago. I never invested in any project. I never wanted any of the rewards. But do they provide details of the individuals? Like, this project is backed by, John Smith, Joe Doe, and whoever it is. Here's his ID. He lives here, etc. Do they do that?
No, they don't provide that much information. In fact, not even investment crowdfunding platforms like ourselves, they don't usually provide as much information, and they kind of wait for you to trust them, the intermediary, the platform. That's something we didn't really agree with, which is why we're trying to be as transparent and show as much information as possible for our project. Okay, we're not going to showcase the ID of the person, but we definitely show, their social presence, LinkedIn and so on, and their background, their CVs. So we're trying to make that connection as apparent as possible.
Yeah, I think that's important, right? If anybody's going to put their money, they need to know where it's going, and obviously feel comfortable with the chances of getting back what they're putting their money down for.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to, just to clarify again, because I think you mentioned this, the main difference between Crowdbase and Kickstarter is Crowdbase is not a reward based.
No.
Let's dig into that. Tell us a bit more about what does an investor on Crowdbase get?
So as an investment-based crowdfunding platform, people that actually invest in the campaigns get some kind of shares or so-called securities in the company. So you have some kind of ownership, or you lend money to the company, or it could be something more complex that you lend money now and then it becomes an ownership. So we focus on that segment, that with your investment, you're going to get a reward. Not the reward, sorry, let's not confuse it. You're going to get a return. You should get a return. So that's the space we're focusing on, and that's the license we have in order to work in that space. So it's very much like any other investment that you would make. Just this is for, let's just say, private companies. They're not, Apple or Microsoft, that they are listed on a stock exchange and you can buy and sell really easily. This is the private side of things, where you have to make investment, you have to wait quite a long time usually, it's hard to sell it, and eventually, hopefully, it's going to make a return.
And I think also maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, it differentiates. So let's say I think there's a few things you have to talk about. One is for somebody to invest in stocks, let's say like the likes of Apple or Google, they're available on the stock exchange. You can access the markets in whichever way, whether it's through a CFD platform, and that's just a derived product. It's not the actual. You don't actually have a stock, but you just investing on the difference, the hope of a future increase in the price.
Yeah.
Or where you access the actual exchange and you have as many shares as you're able to afford to buy. Okay, but these are listed companies, established, audited, strict audit, regular. It's different. I think on Crowdbase, the gist of it is, and in my understanding, is it's mainly startup projects. It's a startup business or maybe an established company that is starting a new project.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's expand on that. Not so much of an exact question, but I think is just first verify that that's the main difference. And from an investor standpoint, what would you say would make me decide as an investor whether I would invest $1,000 in Google on the stock exchange or in a project on Crowdbase?
Yeah, so in general, that's very correct the way you have described it. And let me just begin by saying that the purpose of Crowdbase, as I described before, was to facilitate this funding for innovative projects. And that's usually the startups, the new companies that are created out of academic research or some kind of new development, or people see a service that people need on the market, and they create something new to provide the solution for them. As you mentioned, though, that's quite different from investing in the stock market. And because you're investing so early on in the life of a company, there is an equivalent risk that comes with it. We all know Apple, for example, is going to release the new iPhone every September. Millions or even billions of people go on and buy it. They have their established brand, established customer base. So it's a stable company, as you mentioned. It's a huge company, and the risk is less, which is why you usually would expect a smaller return as well. Now, if we go to this side of the spectrum, that is quite early in the life of a startup, you're just getting in at the beginning of the company, the beginning of their journey, the risk is quite high, but at the same time, you would expect that if it succeeds, the return could be quite high as well. So it's like saying, what if you had the chance to invest in Apple or Microsoft when they were, back in the days in a garage?
Or even Tesla in 2019.
Yes, exactly. So that's the different side of the table we are focusing on, the private side of things, on the really early side of things. And yes, there is higher risk and other type of risk as well. So you can sell your investment whenever you want, or you're not getting a regular dividend and so on. But you are compensated for that risk through a higher expected return. So the difference, let's just say that you mentioned before, of going and investing €1,000 in Apple versus one of our projects, is how much risk do you want to take on? The one is a nice stable investment that's probably going to keep on going up with a stable trend, and the other one is a higher risk one that could potentially fail or could potentially have a multiples of return on your money.
Cool. So how does one get started, right? You just register, and how do I get access to these projects?
Yeah, so the idea of crowdfunding is that it's publicly accessible to everybody. So anybody can go on our website or some other platform similar to ours, and they can see these investment opportunities that are currently live, and they're looking for money. They usually are live for 2 to 3 months. So you have that window to invest in them. As an individual, you can easily create an account online and go through the process of getting verified, very similar to how Revolut works. When you're opening an account with Revolut, it's all online. You need to put some information, your ID, and so on, in order for us to make sure that you're the person who you're claiming to be, and that the shares you get or the investment is, accredited to the right person. And then once you do that, then you have access to all the investments that are on our platform that are live at that time. And you can choose to invest from as little as €100 in startups or €500 in real estate projects.
And does the same apply as, I don't know if we mentioned this before, but does the same apply as we spoke about with Kickstarter, where if the target investment is not reached, you get your money back.
Yeah, exactly. So the money, what happens essentially is that when people invest in one of these projects, the money is held in a special account by Crowdbase, and the money is there and is being safe kept by us until the project succeeds its goal. If it doesn't, then the money just been returned to the investors.
Does Crowdbase hold the money, or is it in an escrow?
It's kind of like an escrow account. It's actually called like a client's funds account, which is especially designated for this kind of money, and it's separate from other money that Crowdbase holds.
We're going to veer a little bit off topic here, because since we touched on these topics, why not give this information to the audience? So can you tell us what escrow means? Like, what is an escrow account?
Essentially, it's an account that's sitting in between two parties when they're trying to close a transaction. So let's just say you're trying to buy a house and there's a buyer and a seller. Then there's this period when once you agree the trade between the two, that you're like, okay, do I give the money first, or do you give me the the house first? And there is this standoff. So in order to solve that, they're like, okay, put the money in this account, which the money will be released once I get the house. So it's kind of like a way to solve this impasse between the two parties.
100% good. So, and then in the case of, I guess, if anybody had to ask, then why doesn't Crowdbase use an escrow? You mentioned client's funds account. So I know that is because you're a SIF.
Yeah, exactly. It acts in very much the same way as an escrow account, but instead of being managed by another party, then it's managed by Crowdbase, which we already do the intermediation between the investors and the project owners. So we also do that part of the process.
Yeah, and just in case anybody doesn't know, any broker who's an investment firm has the obligation to have in a separate account all clients' funds, and they're not allowed to touch that money for operational expenses.
Exactly. So even if, let's just say the next day Crowdbase goes bankrupt, that doesn't affect that money. The money is specifically on the name of each client, so we know who belongs that money to. The bank doesn't have a claim, or any debtors of Crowdbase don't have a claim on that money.
And that's exactly why a regulator is important, because the minute an investment firm trespasses that policy, there's major problems for the investment firm.
We have what's going on right now with FTX and so on. That's exactly what they did. They took the client's money and they traded. They used that to trade cryptos and so on. And once they lost it, you don't have the money to give back to your customers.
As more stories are revealed with the FTX story, it is incredible what a shit show that was.
It's quite impressive, because especially looking from the point of view of Crowdbase and myself, that we are running this regulated entity, and I see all these procedures that traditional investment firms need to follow to make sure the money is safe, that the trades are correct, and you have a proper log of what's going on. And then I compare this with this Goliath that became to be FTX, and they were doing none of it. They were operating completely out of line and on their own. They could do whatever they want, and it's just crazy to me.
Yeah. And how they got away with it in the US.
Yeah.
Where regulation is, not theoretically, it's super strict. Obviously, the SEC, right?
Yes.
Dropped the ball there.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah,
this thing just grew way faster than the regulator could keep up. Nobody expected it, I guess, to have this exponential growth, and from within a few months it became from a few billion business to industry to a trillion to 3 trillion industry. And
What a mind-blowing story. Let's go back to Crowdbase. So we were on the topic of how it's regulated. If the target is reached, somebody has invested, the target has been reached, and the project kicks off. And then high risk, high reward, but then also there's a potential to lose. But at least you know your loss is capped at whatever you invested in the beginning.
Exactly.
And this is just also in any conversation that I have with anyone on this podcast. This is not financial advice at all, but I think this what applies generally. And if a regulated firm who doesn't state this or not, I'll just state it over here: never ever put any money you cannot afford to lose at the end of the day, right?
100% agree.
So I personally love this initiative that you've done here.
Thank you.
And because I do believe that it creates the framework for innovation, right? And could you give us a little bit of, what are the plans for Crowdbase? Are you looking to do local projects? So, and let's dissect it a little bit, okay? A business like this, there's let's call it two main sources that you need to facilitate, right? There's the investors, which you need at mass. That's the whole idea, right? An investor, and just to repeat what the benefit here is, a small investor. So somebody who does not have the means to go, because you did mention real estate, you did mention, and we'll talk about the project that you've done before. So, for example, if I'm a small investor, I don't have the money to go and buy an apartment and rent it out, which is what many people would consider as a safe investment. And again, there's risk there again, right? But just generally speaking, real estate, buy a property at a good price, rent it out, get a return, pay that initial investment off in whatever it is, 10 years or 7 to 10 years. If your return of investment is 7% and up, that's a good investment. Generally speaking, but somebody might not have the money to go and spend 200, 300, 400,000 and cannot even get it from the bank. And if they do get it from the bank, the interest is so high, it consumes them, etc., etc. Where a platform like yours, where there could be a real estate project that costs millions or a few 100,000, if you're an investor and you've got €500 or €100 or €1,000 or 10,000, whatever you're able to afford, you can invest and participate in proportion relevant to what you invest, right? So having built that context, what is the main plan for Crowdbase? Where are you heading? What is the plan?
So that's well said by yourself. Like, this is in many ways what we are trying to offer to investors, this accessibility to these projects that otherwise they wouldn't have access to. And although we started off in Cyprus, when we are based in Cyprus, the goal for Crowdbase was always to be a pan-European platform. And what I mean by that is that we want to connect the European markets, and specifically the capital markets or financial markets, between themselves. So, and this is one of the initiatives of the EU as well. We have a lot of good ideas here in Cyprus and a lot of demand for money to make them, to see them through. But at the same time, we don't have enough, money or people willing to invest this money. But at the same time, you could have a lot of investors in Germany, Spain, France, and so on that are looking for these opportunities. So what we are trying to do is to bridge this gap at the end of the day, to bring money across European countries and be able to fund projects everywhere. Where there is innovation, we want to bring the proportionate investors in order to make this a success and hopefully give them the resources that they need to succeed. On the other side of the spectrum, on the investor side of the things, then we are giving also the European investors the ability to invest cross-border in whatever they like, or they see the potential opportunity or the upside that they want. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're in Cyprus right now. We're gonna soon be opening up more campaigns in Greece and so on, and go expand towards the rest of Europe.
Got it. So, and before we started mentioning, we dissected. We spoke about investors, and that's small investors who invest in the project. So that's investors are the one, and also the second part of it is project owners, people who have an idea and want to launch it. And so in that sense, then expansion could be multifaceted, right? And I think this makes this general sense. I think for investment, looking at only the Cyprus markets might not make so much sense, because there's a smaller population, and just more difficult to penetrate, I think, and reach the targets. Where I think on the investor side of this business, as I understand it, is have an audience of as many people as you can globally. And I don't know if by regulation you're allowed in your surf. Are you allowed to, for example, get investment from somebody in the US?
The US is a bit tricky. It's a special case because they have their own requirements for their investors. So on our platform, no, but you can get an investment from anywhere within the European Economic Area. So that's
So if somebody from Singapore, for example, wants to invest in a project here?
Theoretically, we can allow that, but they would need to come on their own initiative. We can market to those third countries.
The reverse solicitation.
Yeah, exactly. We cannot market to them, but they can, if they Google something like Cyprus crowdfunding platform or one of our projects, they see it naturally, then they can invest, yes.
Got it. European investors, let's call it, so you're compliant.
Yeah.
But then also there's the project side, right? The ideas, the innovators, the initiatives. I think there's maybe different strategies here. And I guess I'll voice my thoughts behind this, and then maybe you could expand on that if you agree, and then if your plans align, maybe, right? So I'm a very firm believer of Cyprus can be this hub of innovation, right? Where we've got so much talent, in my opinion, smart people who follow the standard path of a profession. Go study, then get a job at some big firm, earn your salary, and live your life. Okay, but I do think that there's a lot of missed opportunities left on the table, because while that might be the secure route, stepping out of your comfort zone, nothing great happens in a comfort zone, right? I mean, if Elon Musk was a person who would not step out of his comfort zone, then he would have just stuck with his 180 million sale, whatever that was that he got from PayPal. And maybe not even PayPal would have existed. Certainly Tesla, SpaceX, and all of these other brilliant companies that have been created wouldn't have existed if he wasn't this step out of your comfort zone, right? And innovate and just try. And I do believe that Cyprus can be a hub for, innovators like this. And it starts from, the government has got a very big role in making that happen. And there's a long ways to that. But until then, I think platforms like yours make a lot of sense. And the projects, and here's the question in building this context, right? And I think it will also be maybe limiting to your business. Maybe there are not many people who are willing to take that risk because of the history. And I'd like to hear your opinion about the history. Are Cypriots generally willing to take that risk and that punt? I'm gonna try, right? And why not? Maybe the repercussions of trying something innovative and failing, which failure is not, a testament to your abilities at all, in my opinion. It's just part of your path to getting somewhere. So, as a business, as Crowdbase, maybe focusing only on the Cypriot market for projects, which, in my view, would be amazing. Why not? Why not have all these innovative projects coming in and, seeds planted, growing from investments outside? What a beautiful scenario, right? But maybe that doesn't work for you because maybe there's not many people that are willing to take that risk. So I've said a lot over here, right? Two questions, right? Are your plans to maybe focus on getting innovators only out of Cyprus, inspiring people? And then if not, would you expand in, your plans about Greece and whatever it is for projects?
Yeah, so you touched on a lot of points there. And let's begin with the last one you just mentioned about our plans. So although on the side of the investors, that's quite easy to scale up and attract people to invest from any country across Europe, it could be across the continent. On the other side, the projects that requires a much more personal approach, and you need to be there on the ground in that ecosystem in order to be able to find those startups and the good ideas, screen them, select the right ones, do your due diligence, so on. So that's the less scalable side of our businesses, and why we will continue for the foreseeable future to be focused on the Cypriot market for sure. And on top of that, because we want to see this progress being made here locally, rather than going to third countries and so on. We will eventually expand, starting with Greece, our pool of investment opportunities and startups that we host. But the focus to a large degree will remain in Cyprus, because we believe that there is a lot of good ideas here in Cyprus. We have a very educated labor force. I think by nature we are innovators. But there are also those challenges that you mentioned, that perhaps culturally, it's not in our culture to take those big steps or those big risks, to a leap of faith of some sort in yourself or your team to do something different and get out of your comfort zone that is required for you to grow and to test whether your idea works. You will never know before. And that's the reason why a lot of startups fail. You have to try it to see whether it works. Okay, you can argue about market fit and so on, but even in that case, a lot of startups still go on to fail. And having this culture of looking down, let's just say, on people that have failed is not going to help us. In contrast, when we were talking with the ambassador of Israel, that they have an amazing innovation ecosystem there, an entrepreneurial ecosystem. Lots of times they value entrepreneurs who have failed in the past a lot more than people who haven't failed, because if you fail, you learn, hopefully, you learn something. And same goes for me. I mean, if Crowdbase fails in 2, 3, 5, 10 months or whenever, I believe I have learned so much through this journey that I wouldn't have learned from a traditional day-to-day job.
How interesting, and I guess that opens up, and I'll ask your opinion. It's a few questions here. So you mentioned that there was a program that you were working on before Crowdbase, the Cyprus, the equity fund, which didn't materialize.
Yeah, so it didn't materialize back then, but now there was another process. It finished last year, and now they have selected finally the fund manager who's going to do this. So this project is going to happen. They're in the process of raising the money. They're going to raise about 10 million on their own, plus the 25 the government is going to give. So they're going to have about 35 million to invest in startups in Cyprus.
That's a good start. And I think what's important here maybe to mention is, for those who are maybe listening to this and thinking, I want to innovate, right? When we talk about these funds that are available, millions, and you want to get, I think it's important to understand that the target isn't to get money. The target is to create something innovative that actually has a chance to succeed. Yeah. Don't focus on the money is just a tool on realizing whatever goal or innovation you have in mind, right? I think maybe many individuals might get confused with that and think, the end goal is, yes, I got the investment. Yes, we're successful, but then you fail as a project.
I mean, it is quite a challenge to get the money, especially in Cyprus. We don't have as many providers. And it's definitely a big success if you manage to do it. We have a few good success stories of people raising the money, but the day after is even more challenging because now you need to implement that plan, see that it works through, and then collect, hopefully, the returns on your investment at the end of the day.
100%. So, again, that is just the start of what your goal should actually be. It's a milestone. I agree with that. It's a significant milestone. Check, but you're not done.
Yes,
because you got to get that money back. Right. Okay. Yeah, super interesting. And then, how would you say that a government? What can the government do? Right. So funding is a good start.
Yeah, this
have a program.
Fund,
have a program available, whether that's from the government or platforms such as yours. What else, can be done? What has Israel done, or what kind of blueprint can our government follow?
Yeah,
and I'm sure there are some initiatives. I'm not going to sit and say, stand and claim that I know everything that the government's doing. No. But there's no innovation happening. There is some, right? I mean, like what you've done here is innovative. That's awesome. It came at your own risk. The government, in my opinion, didn't help you. Yes, you started off with a project, whatever it is, but it was your own initiative. You started it. And I think, if somebody who has an idea knows the consequences of my first failure means that I'm done and I need to work forever to cover that mistake and just make ends meet, that's not inspiring. What can the government do to change that, flip it a little bit?
Yeah. So as you mentioned, this is a multifaceted approach that needs to be done in order to create an aspiring entrepreneur ecosystem where people can go on to innovate and have the right tools to succeed. And one of the challenges is funding that we're seeing. As you mentioned, we are challenging, we're trying to assist in. The government has some grant schemes now they're setting up the equity fund and so on. But it goes beyond that in many ways. You need the people, you need the right mindset, the right culture. You need to give them the right resources, perhaps even a physical space for everybody to work together, and you get that, people bumping on one another, and that's how ideas are created. The events that bring people together, like Reflect Festival, that's once a year, you go there and you can see the other people like yourself that are trying to create something new, and that's how innovation is created in many ways. So there's a lot of things that it's already been done in many ways, but there is also a lot more things that we need to do in order to achieve that goal of being a tech island or a entrepreneur hubspot here in Cyprus. And we can see that there is ways to see what other countries are doing. We don't need to we're not the first ones to do this, and so it's fairly easy for us. So few things that I can think about is the tax incentives for startups and investors, making the procedures easier. Could be anything, could be setting up a company. Why can't you do that online? Why do you need a lawyer to still set up a company? Or the way you get a certificate, the way you get so on and so on. There's these small challenges that they slowly need to optimize in order to make this process as seamless as possible, because there is also competition. If a team and a new team doesn't set up in Cyprus, they can set up somewhere else. And we've been quite lucky in many ways with the immigration of a lot of people from Eastern Europe to Cyprus and Limassol specifically. Because they bring a lot of new ideas, and they bring a lot of this culture, I think, that we were missing. And I feel like we're getting inspired in many ways, and hopefully we're gonna see a lot more Cyprus locals to follow suit or work with existing startups.
I agree. And I think also having that discussion, exactly as what we're doing here right now.
Yeah.
I think that discussion is good. So let's talk about, and then I guess we're getting towards the end of our podcast session. Sure. Yeah, let's talk about the existing projects that are on Crowdbase. Maybe the ones that have already succeeded. Have there been ones that have not reached the target? Let's talk about what Crowdbase has done so far.
Yeah. So essentially, Crowdbase started off full-on operations about a year ago in October 2022, and we started off with a really promising project. It's called EasyBoat, and it's part of the Easy Group with association with Stelios Hadjioannou, who himself invested $500,000 in that project. And then we went on to do a crowdfunding for the company, which was very successful. We raised $470,000 from over 140 investors.
Wow!
So that was really good start for us to get us on the map a little bit, that we're doing this thing, this is how it works, and we have a really good name to get started.
Well done.
Thank you. After that, we actually tried to do something different. We tried to do a debt crowdfunding campaign. So it's essentially people would lend money to a company, which didn't succeed. So we kind of saw from that the market reaction of people didn't want to invest in that. There wasn't enough returns, perhaps. It wasn't innovative enough. It wasn't sexy enough for them to invest. So again, we kind of pivot from there. We're like, okay, we don't want that. People don't want that, so we shouldn't do that again. And we went on then to do a local startup called Snap, which is should be launching very soon, a local booking app for beauty and wellness. So you can book your haircut, you can book your spa or whatever else you need. Something that successfully abroad, but it just didn't get done here in Cyprus yet. So that's kind of an easy model to do here in Cyprus.
What's it called? Snap?
Snap, yeah.
Okay.
Not to be confused with Snapchat. Just Snap Cyprus, I guess. It's easy to find. So that was also successful, raised 212,000, which is a significant amount for a pre-seed round here in Cyprus. And now, just a few weeks ago, we started also our first real estate crowdfunding project, which in many ways is worked the same way we described before with startups. You essentially own a piece or a shareholding of this real estate project, of the development of the project, then you essentially become a developer, and you get to share the returns, and you can invest in this project from very little, 500 euros, which is much more accessible than it was before, you know.
Yeah, we did discuss that just before we started this podcast, and that is interesting. So, when it comes to real estate, there's obviously different participants, and the return of investment. There's the construction and the developers is what you just mentioned. So, building the site, and what's required there is obviously to have good contractors, proper developers, architects, whatever it is, getting the permits in place on time, the materials, a whole other massive industry that is difficult to do. Not anybody can just go and become a developer,
for sure,
or at least a successful developer that builds buildings that don't fall down.
Yes.
And what a great opportunity to participate in that portion of the industry, because what is more easily accessible when it comes to real estate as a topic is I don't know how to develop, but I've got money to invest. I buy an apartment, I rent it. End of story. That's easy. I mean, not super.
That has its challenges.
It's got its challenges as well, but not on the beginning cycle, let's call it, of real estate, which is super interesting. And on this project, what's the project called?
It's called The Courtyard, which is a closed residential development of 6 apartment buildings, 66 flats. And the reason it's called the Courtyard is because it has a central courtyard between the buildings. That is like a garden where people, you can enjoy the plants and the tranquility. And instead of all the parking spaces below, there's a huge underground space. So you get that nice, greenery instead of.
So 66 apartments is, in terms of Cyprus scale, that's not small. That's a big.
It is
a complex.
Yeah, it's like a complex. Yeah, exactly.
A little complex with a courtyard.
Yes.
That's not public, but not private either. But
shared
secluded.
Space.
It's a shared space. Sounds interesting. And any other projects?
After the Courtyard, we also have another local startup that's soon to be listed. It's called Moving Doors. And they have a similar model to Blue Ground in Athens, in Greece, which they essentially offer flexible accommodation for digital nomads and professionals in Cyprus. And they started off in Limassol. They have some property now in Paphos and Larnaca. So if a professional or digital nomad wants to come to Cyprus for, let's just say, 2-3 months, 2-3 months is too long for an Airbnb or a hotel. It's going to charge you way too much. And it's too short to lease an apartment, because that's usually 1 year. So you're playing in that space that you have everything ready and set up. You just have everything for you to move in. So all the utilities are set up and you don't need to worry about that. You can get your cleaning, you can, additional services. So it's very convenient for somebody who is moving a lot to come in, go live there for a few months, and then go off to the next country. And this is quite a popular model that's been growing lately.
How interesting.
Yeah.
And what do the investors get?
Yeah, they would get a share in the company again.
Okay.
Yeah, you get an ownership in this company.
Good. So, Frixos, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you wanted to share in terms of, what Crowdbase is doing, or about yourself? Feel free.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure conversation. About Crowdbase, I think we're trying in general to be very transparent and open and communicate with everybody. So if you look us up our website or social media, you can immediately find most of the information of what we are doing, what we are currently up to, our latest developments. So It's all public out there. I would encourage anybody to go check it out. If you are somebody who is looking for funding at your startup or real estate project that has some innovation in it, then feel free to reach out. And even if you're an investor and you want to, learn more, if there's something we didn't cover here today, then of course reach out. Like both me and Panagiotis are open to any questions and active on social media, so feel free.
Who are the owners
of Crowdbase?
Yeah,
it's myself, Daniel, who is the co-founder and CTO, and we're childhood friends from primary school, and Panagiotis, who is the chief operating officer of the company.
I think you've had a very good start with Sir Stelios Hagioannou backing you on your. Was that the first project?
Yeah, that was the very first project.
Easy Boat. Well done. I truly wish you success, major success, and I'm certainly going to be keeping an eye on you. Thank you very much for your time, Frixos. It was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Bam.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Remember to hit the like button. Comment down below if you have any guests you'd like me to interview and any topic you'd like me to discuss in future episodes.